A mechanic? In this room? The words dripped with scorn as the CEO pointed at the silent engine on the table. Her diamond bracelet sparkled under the conference lights, but her smile was razor-sharp. "You reek of grease and gasoline," she sneered, stepping closer, as if even breathing the same air was beneath her. Jamal Washington froze at the doorway. His rough hand still clutched a toolbox smudged with oil. He hadn't even been called here to fix anything. He had been delivering equipment for the maintenance team when Victoria Sterling, the iron-willed CEO of Tech Vanguard Industries, locked eyes on him. 20 board members in expensive suits turned, their gazes sharp and cold. To them, Jamal didn't belong in this high-rise kingdom of glass, leather, and ambition. He was a janitor, a maintenance worker, someone who should remain invisible. Victoria's red heels struck the marble floor like a judge's gavel as she closed the distance. Her perfume, sharp, expensive, and suffocating, mixed with the metallic tang of the broken engine between them. "Here's a deal, maintenance boy," she said, her voice dripping with condescension. "Fix this $2 million prototype that Ivy League engineers couldn't repair, and I'll marry you right here in front of everyone. Fail, and you're gone, permanently." A few executives chuckled under their breath. Others exchanged amused glances, already celebrating his inevitable failure. The room fell silent. Every eye locked on Jamal. Before him sat not just a hunk of steel, but the company's crown jewel, a prototype engine designed to power their next generation of self-driving delivery vehicles. 3 years of research, 47 patents, and over $50 million in contracts depended on it. For 6 weeks, the brightest minds had failed to make it run for more than 14 minutes and 37 seconds. And now, the fate of that machine and Jamal's very future was being mocked into existence by a bet. Have you ever been written off so completely that the world already celebrated your failure? That's exactly what Jamal Washington faced that day. And what happened next? No one in that room would ever forget. Before we dive into this unbelievable story, tell me in the comments, where are you watching from right now and what time is it for you? I love seeing people tuning in from all over the world. And if you're new here, hit that subscribe button and join our family. Because trust me, you don't want to miss stories like this one. Jamal looked at the machine, then at Victoria. For a moment, the humiliation nearly crushed him. He wasn't dressed for this. His apron bore stains from hours of dirty work. His boots squeaked on the polished marble floors, leaving faint marks that the executives noticed with wrinkled noses. But then he remembered something. His father's words, spoken long ago in their small garage on the south side. "Engines don't care about your skin color, son. They only care about skill. And that's something nobody can take from you." So Jamal set down his toolbox on the conference table with a quiet thud. The laughter rippled again, but he ignored it. He ran his hand along the engine, studying the wires. The scars of countless failed attempts and the nervous flicker of sparks. When he finally looked up, his eyes locked with Victoria's. "I'll take your deal," he said firmly. His voice steady despite the tension. The room erupted into whispers. Some laughed harder. Others leaned forward, curious. Victoria raised a perfect eyebrow, smirk tugging at her lips. "Good," she said, turning on her heel and striding back to her chair. "Let's watch a janitor fail where geniuses couldn't." The battle lines were drawn, and Jamal Washington had just accepted the most humiliating challenge of his life. As Marcus stood before the silent machine, his mind drifted back to a different world, one far from polished boardrooms and glittering skylines. He remembered the cramped garage where his father first placed a wrench in his small hands. Oil-stained floors, the smell of gasoline, the hum of old engines. It wasn't glamorous, but it was home. His father's voice echoed in his memory. "Son, engines don't lie. Treat them with patience and they'll speak to you." Another memory burned brighter. Naomi, his little sister, sitting on a torn couch, her eyes full of dreams bigger than their neighborhood. He had promised her, "I'll take care of you. One day you'll walk into a university with your head held high, and I'll be there to see it." That vow anchored him now, when humiliation threatened to drown him. Marcus stepped closer to the prototype. He asked for diagnostic tools, schematics, Anything that might help. Clara scoffed loudly, leaning back in her chair. A real man doesn't need more than his hands. The board chuckled at her cruelty, but when one director pointed out that the challenge was meaningless without proper tools, she reluctantly agreed. With a sharp wave of her hand, the equipment was brought in, the hours stretched. Marcus worked methodically, sweat dripping onto polished steel. He traced wires, adjusted circuits, listened to the faintest whine of failing systems. Executives drifted in and out, some mocking, some oddly fascinated by his persistence. Every now and then, doubt clawed at him. What if I fail? What if they're right and I don't belong here? His hands trembled, but he steadied them with a whisper only he could hear. Engines don't care about your skin color, they only care about skill. And with that, Marcus kept working, long after the laughter faded into silence. The deeper Marcus dug into the machine, the more his suspicion grew. This wasn't just a malfunction, it was deliberate. Circuits had been crossed in ways no accident could explain, sensors intentionally damaged, wires subtly frayed. It wasn't the engine that had failed, it was the engineers, covering their mistakes with sabotage. Marcus leaned back for a moment, his breath heavy, realization dawning. Clara hadn't brought him here expecting success. She had wanted a spectacle, a public humiliation to make him a cautionary tale. His stomach tightened, but instead of fear, something else rose. Resolve. He rolled up his sleeves and began to work differently. Not like the polished engineers with their sterile methods, but like the street mechanic his father raised. He stripped back the layers of sabotage, rewiring with precision born from years of fixing cars no manual could save. He adjusted the timing belts by ear, feeling the rhythm of the machine. Where the sensors had been ruined, he bypassed them with makeshift connections, trusting instinct where technology had failed. At first, Clara smirked, sipping wine as if watching a comedy show. But the longer Marcus worked, the less confident she appeared. When the engine began to whine with a pulse of life, she leaned forward, her smirk faltering. "Even if you fix it," she said coldly, "no one here will take you seriously." But the boardroom atmosphere had shifted. Executives whispered in hushed tones. If Marcus succeeded, perhaps he wasn't a liability, but an asset. Hours slipped into night. With one final adjustment, Marcus pressed the ignition. The engine roared awake, steady, powerful, alive. The laughter stopped. The boardroom, once filled with arrogance, now stood in stunned silence. Marcus had done the impossible. The engine purred, steady and powerful, as though it had never been broken. Its rhythm filled the boardroom with a deep, commanding hum, echoing against the glass walls like a declaration of victory. For a moment, no one spoke. The executives, who had spent weeks mocking each other's failures, stood frozen, their eyes locked on the machine that had defied every expectation. Marcus leaned back, his chest rising and falling with exhaustion. Sweat dripped down his temples, and grease streaked his cheeks, but his eyes blazed with quiet fire. Slowly, deliberately, he set down his wrench, wiped his hands on his stained apron, and looked straight at Clara Sterling. "You said," he began, his voice low but sharp enough to cut through the silence, "if I fix it, you'd marry me." The words hit the room like an electric shock. A ripple of nervous laughter swept across the executives. Some chuckled as though it were a joke gone too far. Others shifted uncomfortably, their faces betraying shock that he dared to say it out loud. Clara's carefully built facade cracked. Her cheeks flushed, though whether from anger or embarrassment no one could tell. She shot up from her chair, her heels striking the marble like gunshots. "That was a joke!" she snapped, her voice faltering as she tried to reassert control. "No one actually expected you to—" Marcus cut her off, his voice rising with conviction. "My skills aren't a joke. My life isn't a joke. You may laugh at where I come from, at the oil on my clothes or the color of my skin, but respect is owed, whether you give it or not." The laughter died instantly. His words struck deeper than the roar of the engine. The board members exchanged glances. The same men who had mocked his presence now looked at him with a newfound calculation. The impossible had been made possible right in front of their eyes. Finally, the chairman cleared his throat. "Mr. Washington," he said formally, "we'd like to offer you a position here." "Lead engineer. Effective immediately," Marcus froze. "Lead engineer." The very role teams of Ivy League graduates had competed for now being handed to him. Clara turned sharply, glaring at the chairman, but even she couldn't stop the tide. Investors had already been whispering. Stockholders would demand answers. The company couldn't afford to dismiss the man who had just saved its crown jewel. Still, beneath her anger, something flickered in Clara's eyes. Admiration? Resentment? Both? She watched Marcus, this man she had mocked as a janitor, stand tall in the place she thought he'd crawl away from. For the first time, she saw him not as just a mechanic, but as someone capable of shaking her empire at its foundations. Marcus didn't smile. He didn't thank them. He only nodded once, steady and firm, as if to say, "I didn't come here to be your clown. I came here to prove who I am," and that night, the balance of power in Tech Vanguard's gleaming tower shifted forever. The boardroom was still buzzing with murmurs, but Marcus didn't stay to bask in their half-hearted applause. He knew their sudden respect wasn't born of sincerity, it was born of shock. Standing tall, grease still staining his shirt, he shook his head at their offer. "I won't be your lead engineer," he said firmly, voice steady but resolute. "I won't build dreams for a company that only wanted to laugh at mine." Gasps rippled across the room. Executives shifted uncomfortably in their chairs, unprepared for rejection. For a moment, Clara's eyes flashed with both fury and disbelief. Nobody had ever refused her company before, and certainly not a mechanic. Marcus continued, "I'll build something of my own. Something honest. Something that carries my family's name with pride." The birth of Naomi Motors. Within weeks, Marcus's story spread beyond the boardroom. Investors, impressed by his determination and the flawless engine he had revived, sought him out. The same people who once mocked his calloused hands now extended theirs in admiration. With their backing, Marcus opened his own startup, Naomi Motors, named after his younger sister. For him, it wasn't just a company. It was a promise fulfilled. Naomi, once doubtful of her brother's ability to balance her education and his dream, now stood proudly at his side, the co-founder and face of a